All right, welcome to day 2. Your homework is packet page 3, the next 4 ones on page 3, numbers 5 through 8. So remember, there's grids on the back of the packet. So you can do your tables and tell your transformations. Make sure you're telling the transformations for each one. Now, because we're comparing them on the homework to 2 to the x and 3 to the x, you'll notice the 4 for homework tonight on page 3 all have either 1/2 or 1/3. So that's like having a 2 to the -1 or a 3 to the -1. So the fraction should cause them all to have a reflection over the y-axis. So make sure to include those on your homework ones. If this video is my first day out, then that means we probably already did today's lesson on Friday. I probably included it on Friday stuff. So if today is my first day of being gone, you can just watch the going over the homework and then switch to doing tonight's homework. But if I was also out on Friday, then make sure to watch this whole video. So let's go over the homework. We have 2 to the x plus 1. So that's a shift left 1. So you would want -1 as the middle value in your table. Graph it, do a control T. We will eventually learn how to do these without the calculator, but for the first 2 days we will do them with the calculator because we mainly want you to focus on the transformations the first couple days. You get your 5 values when you're graphing them. Make sure to have arrows on your graph. Make sure to have labeled the x and y axis and to label your equation. Next one, a -2 in the exponent is a shift right 2. So you want the middle value in your table to be +2. Pick the things on either side. 0.3 repeating is really 1/3. 0.1 repeating is really 1/9. If you ever have something that's going to go off your graph, if you just have one that's going to go off, that's okay, and you can just plot the other 4. I just shifted my x-axis down so I could plot all of them. Make sure you have arrows on your graph, x and y axis labeled, label your equation. Next one, we have a shift left 3, and the minus out front is reflection over the y-axis. Put it in your calculator. Make sure you have 3 or -3 as the middle value of your table, because we want values that are going to fit on our graphs. So you adjust your table based on any shifts left or right. Plot each of those. Make sure you label your x and y axis, arrows on your graph, label your equation. And our last one, we've got a shift right 3 because of the -3 in the exponent. And the minus out front, again, reflects us over the x-axis. So in our table, we would want 3 as the middle value. Once you get each of your y values, plot them. Nice smooth curve when you draw it in. Arrows on your graph. Label the x-y axis. Label your equations. So we're going to be on packet page 2. And what we want you to do is graph each of these. So one thing you can do, and it might be the most beneficial for you, is to pause the video, graph yours, and then hit play to see if your graph matches. Okay, there's no way for me to enforce you in doing that, but that's, I think, the best way to do well with these. So this one did not have any shifts left or right. So when you graph it and do your table, we could just do 0 as the middle value, 1 and 2, -1 and -2. 2 to the 0 is 1, 2 to the 1 is 2, 2 squared is 4. And if we follow backwards, 2 to the -1 moves it to the bottom of the fraction, so we get 1/2, and then we'll have 1/4. There's our 4 points. Draw it in with a nice smooth curve. Make sure you label x and y axis and label your equation. So next one would be best again. Try graphing it on your own. Do your table, label everything, and then hit play just to check your graph. So for this one, there are no shifts left and right. So again, you can put 0 as your middle value. 2 to the 0 is 1, and then negate it, you get negative 1. 2 to the 1 is 2, negate it, you get negative 2. 2 squared is 4, negate it, you get negative 4. It's basically our last graph, and everything's just negated. So we have minus a half and minus a fourth. Draw it in with a nice smooth curve. Make sure you got arrows on the ends. Label your XY axis and label your equation. No shifts left or right in this one again, so we'll have 0 as our middle value in the equation. 2 to the 0 is 1. Let's start with the negative ones in this case, because when we put negative 1 in, minus a negative 1 gives us 1. 2 to the first is 2. Minus a negative 2 is 2. 2 squared is 4. And then down here, we'll get the half and the fourth. So we'll plot each of those points. And if you had to describe the transformation for this one, it would be a reflection over the y-axis. Basically, whichever spot is negated, it goes over the opposite axis. Here, the x is negated, so it reflects over the y-axis. If we negated y, we would still have to get y by itself, so we'd divide by negative 1. So that's why the other one ends up looking like this. That's what negating a y looks like, so that reflects over the x-axis. No shifts left or right again. So you can start with 0 as your middle value once again. Anything to the 0 is 1, anything to the first is itself. When you square a half times a half is a fourth. Going the other way, and we'll work with this a bunch in the coming days. 1/2 to the negative 1 is 1 to the negative 1 over 2 to the negative 1. Negative exponents switch where they are in the fractions and become positive, so this just becomes 2 over 1, so 2. Similar idea with the negative 2, but these will all be 2s, so we'll have 4 over 1, which is 4. What you should notice when you plot them is this is the exact same thing as we did in the previous one. And the reason for that is a 1/2 is the same as saying 2 to the negative 1. Well, if you have 2 to the negative 1 and then it's raised to the x, that's the same as 2 to the negative x. That's why all 4 of your ones on the homework tonight, one of your transformation descriptions should be a reflection over the y-axis, because you have 1/2 or 1/3 for each of them. No shifts left or right on this one. When you sub in 0, 2 to the 0 is 1, and then 1 times 2 is 2. When you sub in 1, 2 to the first is 2, and 2 times 2 is 4. When you sub in 2 for x, 2 squared is 4, times 2 is 8. And if we follow our pattern backwards, we would have 1 and then a half. Just so you can see where the half is coming from, 2 times 2 to the negative 2. Negative exponent, so move it to the bottom of the fraction, it becomes positive. This will now be 2 times 1 over 4. When you multiply fractions, you multiply straight across, so that gives you 2/4, which is a half. Make sure to label your equation. Label your x and y axis. If we were describing this transformation, we could say one of two things. We could say multiply y's by 2, or you could say a vertical stretch by a factor of 2. It's a stretch because you're multiplying by something that's bigger than 1. This one now we have a shift. A +3 in the exponent is going to shift us left 3. So we would want -3 as our middle value. Our 2 bigger than it would be -2 and -1. The 2 smaller than it, -4 and -5. When you sub -3 in for x, -3 plus 3 is 0. 2 to the 0 is 1. -2 in for x. We'll end up with a 1 in the exponent, so 2 to the first is 2. -1 in for x. We'll end up with 2 in the exponent. 2 squared is 4. and this will be our half and our fourth. So it's very similar to our first graph, just everything, like we said, is shifted 3 to the left. So for your homework again, you have the second 4 on page 3. Make sure to tell your transformations for each of them. Your grids in the back of the packet are where you will plot them, and make sure you have a T-chart for each of them. Make sure on your graphs you label your X and Y axis, label your equation, and have arrows on your graph. Have a great rest of your day.